Howdy campers! If you're joining us for the first time, you may want to swing over to episode 0, which goes over the main ideas driving this project. In today's episode, we're looking at the player and bow and arrow. Before we dive in, I did want to reiterate, I've only been using the Unreal Engine for about 1 year. I actually dove headfirst with this little submarine game I made for the 2022 Epic Mega Jam. Since that time, I've watched countless hours of video tutorials and read countless documents to get to where I am today, where I can actually start development on a real game. I put some of the Unreal tutorial experts that I learned from down in the description, so be sure to check them out and give them some love. So like many projects before us, I actually just started with the built-in FPS character controller that comes out of the box with Unreal Engine. It gives you a basic but expandable player class to get started with, and the most common requirements are already there and set up for you. In no particular order, let's lay out the requirements for our first-person player. Movement: walk, run, jump, crouch, climb, and side dive. In Gone Camping, there are two main sections of gameplay that we need to consider, and find a balance that works well for both. We have the wide-open outdoor areas, as well as the smaller, more enclosed caves and dungeons. If the player's movement speeds are too slow, it just won't be fun in the open world. Too fast, and the dungeons will feel more like a boomer hallway shooter than the adventure game we're aiming for. Jumping is pretty straightforward, but I've added ledge vaulting or climbing. It lets you pull up on any ledges you can see the top of. This should allow for some exciting close calls after a long jump, or just climbing up to get a different view or a safe perch with your bow. For the side dive, this is a little unique, and not a lot of games use this, but the way it works is you press a stunt button, and any direction you're moving, you'll dive in that direction. When you land, you'll be in a crouched position, so you have to hit jump or uncrouch to go back to standing up. So you can perform some very long jumps with this maneuver. Since the game is primarily focused with the bow and arrow, there may be times where the enemies have surrounded you and you need to get away. That's where the kick button comes in. And if you've watched my previous devlog, you'll understand I'm a big fan of the kick force. In this one, it's set up very similar. Hit the kick button, the player will vault up in the air briefly, do a little shimmy shake, and any enemy that happens to be in your face will get kicked backwards. And so will anything else that's not tied to the ground, for that matter. The interact button is very similar to Skyrim, where you press the button, it will kick off an interaction event. If you hold the button, it will physically pick up the object and allow you to carry it around with you. Then you can set it down, or you can chunk it through the air, whatever you want to do. For example, here's a cooler you can interact with. I know, super fancy cooler. Store your raw food in this thing, and then interact with it to launch the food out. Then you can hold the food over the campfire to cook it. Once it's cooked, when you interact with it again, it'll be consumed and refill your health. Switch over to the bow and arrow. Very simple mechanics with tons of possibilities. In Gone Camping, the bow and arrow is your primary, if not your only weapon that you'll ever have access to. And it will be the arrows that provide the variety and the spice of life. Right now I've got two types of arrows: the basic arrow, which does exactly what it sounds like, deals basic damage. Then I've got a rope arrow, which can be used for multiple things. Right now it just lets you zip like a hook shot, swing around like a grappling hook rope. In the future I'd like to use the rope arrow for fishing, allow you to pull the fish out of the water and into your hands so you can start to cook with them, put them in your cooler, whatever it is gamers like to do with their raw fish. Do have some ideas for other unique arrow types, such as the Cupid arrow that temporarily converts an enemy into an ally, the basics like fire, frost, poison. Open to suggestions, so if you've got an idea for a unique arrow type, put it in the comments down below. The basic arrow was first modeled in Maya for indies years ago with one of the old Unity versions. But for the bow, I modeled a brand new one for the Unreal MVP in the style that I'm calling chunky flat. I've made a few basic animations to tie everything together, some of the first ones I've ever made in Blender. And while we're on the topic, the final game will have this chunky flat look throughout. It's not really low poly, but it has that low poly aesthetic thanks to Nanite. So however many triangles it takes to get the look that I want, then that's how many it takes. To fire the bow, simply press the fire button. you'll notice that the arrow doesn't go very far. If you want it to go further, press and hold the fire button. After about 2 seconds or so, you'll see the screen shake to indicate you've got a fully charged arrow. One thing I'll note is the type of combat we're going for in this game. Charging an arrow doesn't make it cause any more damage than just pressing the fire button. And with the combat in this game, and we'll go over that in more detail in a later episode, but there'll be lots of instances where it's fast-paced and frantic. And if you have a weak, basic bow shot, it's just not going to feel very fun. And if it doesn't feel fun, let's not have it in this game. That's going to wrap it up for episode 1. Next time, we'll get our first look at combat AI with our first bad guys. This has been Brian with Steamburger Studios, and you've been amazing. Thank you so much for the awesome reception of episode 0. We got a bunch of new subscribers, lots of views. One thing I didn't see a lot of was comments, so I don't know if that first episode was truly great or not. You let me know what you think about these devlogs. If there's something I'm missing, I'll try to correct it. If there's something that is just too awesome and you can't handle it, let me know that, and I'll tamp it down a little bit for you guys as best I can. I can't promise too much. It's a pretty wild show over here. All right, take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.